My MIL banned me from dinner. I burst out laughing and asked the owner for a seat, because the owner, please stay with me as I tell my story. And please, do not forget to support our channel by subscribing to our channel, liking our videos, and sharing your loved ones. Your support means the world to us. Now to our story. MPO, you're not welcome here, she said, smirking. Her words sliced through the air, sharp and smug. The table fell silent. Everyone looked at me, waiting to see what I'd do. I laughed, not a nervous laugh, but a deep, genuine one that echoed through the restaurant. Then, without another word, I turned, walked past her, and headed straight for the owner. He was standing near the bar, talking to a waiter. When he saw me, his face lit up. There she is, he said, arms wide open. My favorite girl. He gave me a warm hug, completely ignoring the confused stares behind me. Got your text. Your table is ready. I turned and smiled at my mother-in-law. Her eyes widened as I walked with the owner, who led me to a beautiful private booth near the fireplace. The staff pulled out the chair for me, offered champagne, and treated me like royalty. She stood frozen, her lips parted but no sound coming out. For years, she had tried to break me down. From the moment I married her son, she found reasons to belittle me. Too quiet, too opinionated, too plain, too ambitious. No matter what I did, it was never enough. She whispered criticisms in front of others, made backhanded compliments, and loved to remind me I wasn't good enough for her family. This dinner was supposed to be her grand move. She invited the entire family to an expensive place she thought I couldn't afford. No invite came to me. I only found out through my sister-in-law, who was torn between loyalty and kindness. That's when I made a call to the man who once ran a small food stall beside my dad's first office. Now, he owns one of the finest restaurants in the city, and happens to be one of my dad's best friends. She never knew my father had helped him fund his first location. She never cared to ask about my family, just assumed we were nobody. Tonight, that ignorance came full circle. She tried to sit at her table like nothing happened, but people were already whispering. Her son, my husband, stood up quietly, walked over, and sat beside me instead. The rest of the dinner? She stayed silent, picked at her food, and didn't dare meet my eyes. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or cruel. It's simply showing up, being seen, and taking your place, with dignity. From the start, she never liked me. My mother-in-law wore kindness like a mask, only to remove it in moments when no one else was looking. At family dinners, she'd make sly comments about how some people didn't know how to cook real meals or dress properly for the occasion. She'd rearrange seats to put me at the end of the table, or forget to tell me when plans change. It was always small, subtle things, but they added up. I stayed quiet for years. I didn't want to cause problems. I thought maybe, if I was patient enough, she'd come around. She didn't. One day, she planned a grand dinner, a family-only celebration. Everyone was invited, except me. She made sure of it. My sister-in-law tried to cover for her, but the truth came out. She booked a table at one of the most prestigious restaurants in town, bragging about the exclusivity and elegance of it all. What she didn't know was that I had been supporting that very restaurant behind the scenes for over a year. The owner, a close friend of my late father, he had helped my dad when he was starting out, and when I inherited a portion of the family wealth, I quietly invested in his growing chain. I texted him the moment I found out about the dinner. He replied with a laughing emoji and said, "Come, I've got you." So I did. When I walked in, her face dropped. She stood up, blocked the way, and said coldly, "This is a private dinner. You weren't invited." I smiled. "I know, but I don't need an invitation to a place I help keep running." Confusion spread across the table. Then the owner came out, beaming. "Ah, my favorite investor," he said, wrapping me in a warm hug. He turned to my mother-in-law, who was frozen in place. "I'm afraid I have to ask you to leave. We don't treat guests like that here." Her jaw dropped. "You can't be serious." He stayed firm. "I am. Your name has been removed from the reservation." The room went quiet. My husband stood up, walked to my side, and said simply, "We're done pretending, Mom." She was escorted out while the rest of the family sat in stunned silence. That night, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I let the truth speak for itself. And sometimes that's the most powerful revenge of all. I never truly felt like part of his family. From the moment we got married, there was a quiet wall between me and them, built brick by his mother. She never yelled or insulted me directly. Instead, she used smiles laced with poison, silence in place of inclusion, and questions like, "Are you sure this is your style?" when I wore something new. They never said I wasn't welcome, but they never acted like I was. Holidays were the worst. I'd show up with gifts and food, only to find my name missing from place cards or my dish pushed aside. My husband noticed, but he was caught in the middle, always hoping things would smooth over with time. They didn't. Then came the dinner. A big, formal celebration. His mother called it a tight-knit family gathering and said there were limited seats. I wasn't on the list. Not even a mention. She told my husband not to bring me, said it would make things easier. I smiled when he told me, not out of happiness, but because I had finally accepted the truth. She didn't want me to leave. She wanted me erased. What she didn't know was that I wasn't the same girl she'd been trying to silence for years. Months earlier, I inherited part of my uncle's estate, an estate that included joint ownership of several businesses, one of which was the very restaurant she booked. I'd kept it quiet. I never felt the need to flaunt anything. But this time, it was different. I showed up in a sleek black dress, walked past the stunned hostess, and headed straight to the manager. "Let's rearrange the seating," I said. "I'll be hosting this table tonight." His eyes widened slightly, then he nodded. "Of course." When my mother-in-law saw me, she turned pale. "You can't just show up," she snapped. "I can when I co-own the place," I replied calmly. "And we don't allow people who mistreat our guests." Security was discreet but firm. She was asked to leave for violating the restaurant's guest conduct policy. The others looked around, unsure what to say. My husband joined me, took my hand, and whispered, "It's about time." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw insults. I took my seat. I didn't come to get revenge. I came to reclaim my place. Not because I had to prove something to her, but because I finally knew my worth. And that night, I wasn't an outcast. I was the one in charge. From the start, she made it clear she didn't think I belonged. My mother-in-law looked down on my background, working class, raised by a single mom, scholarships instead of trust fund. She was polite in public, but behind closed doors, she made sure I knew I wasn't one of them. She never said it outright. Instead, it came through her eyes, the way she flinched when I mentioned my old neighborhood, or how she always introduced me last, if at all. To her, I was temporary, someone her son would eventually leave for someone more fitting. So when she planned a fancy dinner with her wealthy friends, she made it a point not to invite me. It was a charity celebration, held at one of the most luxurious places in town. Her circle loved to show off, and she made sure they saw only what she wanted them to see, polished, controlled perfection. Except this time, she missed a detail. A few months before, I invested in a few businesses with money left to me by my late grandmother. One of them happened to be the very restaurant she chose. I didn't tell anyone. It wasn't about showing off. It was about smart moves, quiet wins. When I found out about the dinner, I didn't argue. I just made a call. The evening of the event, I walked in calmly. I wore a simple but elegant dress, nothing loud. The manager saw me and smiled wide. "Glad you could make it," he said warmly, guiding me to the private room. My mother-in-law froze when she saw me. "You weren't invited," she hissed. "I know," I replied, keeping my voice low. "But I do have every right to be here." The owner entered moments later, greeting me with a hug. "We're honored to have you. Let me know if anyone causes trouble," he added, glancing at her. Her friends looked on, confused. Some whispered. Others smiled awkwardly. Then came the moment that ended it. A staff member quietly asked her to step outside. There had been a complaint, hostile behavior toward another guest. She tried to protest, but no one listened. She was escorted out. I stayed. I didn't gloat or smirk. I just enjoyed the evening, made small talk, thanked the servers. Her friends began to ask questions, and by the end of the night, many had come over to introduce themselves properly. Respect doesn't come from money. It comes from how you treat people when you think no one's watching. And that night, everyone was watching. For years, my husband and I smiled through the tension. His mother never accepted me, no matter how kind I was. She criticized my career, my choices, even my laugh. At every gathering, she found ways to make me feel small, turning family into a battlefield. Eventually, we stopped trying to fix what didn't want to be healed. Quietly, we began stepping back. Fewer visits, fewer calls. We built our peace away from her chaos. Then came the dinner. She sent out invites for a family celebration at a well-known restaurant. Everyone got a message, except me. It wasn't a mistake. It was a statement. But what she didn't know, that restaurant had just changed hands. A close friend of mine, someone I'd gone to school with, bought it weeks earlier. When I mentioned what was happening, she smiled and said, "Let's make this interesting." I didn't need revenge, but I wouldn't let her erase me quietly. The night of the dinner, I walked in calmly, dressed in deep navy with a simple necklace, elegant but understated. The hostess greeted me like an honored guest and led me to the dining room. My mother-in-law was mid-laugh when she saw me. Her face turned sharp. "You weren't invited," she snapped. I met her gaze. And yet here I am. Before she could say more, my friend, the new owner, walked over. "Is there a problem?" she asked, her voice cool but firm. "This woman isn't supposed to be here," Emile barked. The owner gave a small smile. "Actually, she's my guest. And more than that, she's the only reason we're hosting this dinner. She approved your event request personally." The table went silent. Her expression cracked, disbelief turning to horror. "I don't think it's appropriate to treat someone like this," the owner continued. "We have a code of conduct. "If you can't respect that, we'll have to ask you to leave." She looked around, but no one came to her defense. Her husband stared at his plate. My sister-in-law bit her lip. My husband stood up and walked to my side, placing his hand on my back. "I think it's time we stop pretending," he said quietly. My mother-in-law was asked to step outside. I stayed. I didn't need to gloat. I simply sat down at the head of the table, the seat she had picked for herself. That night wasn't about revenge. It was about drawing a line, with grace, not spite, and watching her cross it, for the last time. She always had a way of making cruelty look polished. My mother-in-law liked to dress her jabs in pretty words and soft tones, so it never looked like what it was: exclusion, judgment, rejection. She called it tradition, or just keeping things simple. So when she announced a charity dinner to celebrate family unity, no one questioned it. Invitations went out, social media posts followed, and photos of smiling relatives started popping up. Everyone was invited, except me. Again. But this time I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I had something better. What she didn't know, what no one knew, was that I'd recently become a silent partner in a growing hospitality group. One of our newest acquisitions? The very venue she'd booked for her big event. She thought she was hosting it, but really it was my house. So I showed up. I wore confidence instead of bitterness. A sleek black dress, simple earrings, and a calm smile. When I entered, a few heads turned, confused. She noticed me almost immediately. Her eyes widened, but she held on to her performance. "Why are you here?" she asked through gritted teeth when I approached. "I'm here to welcome our guests," I said, as one of the venue's owners. She didn't believe me, until the event coordinator walked over and greeted me with a warm, "We're so glad you could make it. Everything's set up just like you requested." My mother-in-law froze. When the time came for opening remarks, she stepped up to the mic, ready to dazzle donors and friends. But before she could start, the coordinator gently interrupted. "We'd like to begin with a few words from one of our owners, Mrs. Bennett." That was me. I took the microphone, thanked everyone for supporting the cause, and welcomed them on behalf of the venue. I kept it short, professional, and kind. But the message was loud and clear. I belonged here. She didn't get to decide otherwise. The rest of the night, she could barely hold her fake smile. Her friends kept glancing between us. Whispers spread like wildfire. The next day, a local blog featured the event. But the headline wasn't what she wanted. "Surprise owner steals the show at charity gala." My name was in the article, so was the quiet tension that every guest noticed. I didn't plan to humiliate her. I just refused to be invisible anymore. That night, she learned what happens when you build a stage to shine, only to find someone else owns the spotlight. Something didn't feel right. My mother-in-law had been acting overly sweet lately, like she was trying too hard to play nice. I knew that look. It always came right before she did something petty. So I trusted my gut and told my husband. He agreed. He'd seen the signs too. That's when he decided to test a theory. One evening, while talking to her on the phone, he hit record and asked casually, "Are you planning anything special this month?" She laughed and said, "Just a little dinner. Family only, of course. No outsiders this time." That outsider was me. When we listened to the recording together, he shook his head. "She's doing it again." We didn't argue. We didn't call her out. Instead, we made a plan. We told everyone we'd be out of town that weekend. "Work trip," we said. "Can't make it." Then I called someone from my past, my old college friend Sam, who now runs one of the city's most popular restaurants. I explained what was happening. He just laughed and said, "Tell me what you need." The night of the dinner, we arrived early. Sam gave us a private spot to wait. The room was beautifully decorated, the tables set, and guests began arriving one by one. My mother-in-law walked in glowing, greeting everyone with hugs and stories. "So glad we could do this, just family," she said loudly. Then Sam walked over and said, "We have some special guests joining us." She turned confused, then froze as my husband and I walked in. I smiled politely, thought we'd surprise everyone. Her face went pale. Sam stepped forward. "Before we serve dinner, there's something important we need to address." He pulled out his phone and played the recording. Her voice echoed through the room. Silence fell over the table. Some looked shocked. Others just looked down at their plates. My husband spoke next. "We didn't want to believe it, but there it is. We were tired of pretending nothing's wrong." She tried to deny it, to twist her words, but no one bought it. We sat at the table anyway. She didn't. That dinner turned into something else, a quiet reckoning. She left before dessert, alone and speechless. We didn't come to fight. We came to end the lies. And sometimes, the truth speaks loudest when it's played on speaker. She tried to kick me out of my own wedding. It was years ago, but I still remember the way she looked at me, cold, sharp, like I didn't belong. Just before the ceremony, she pulled my husband aside and whispered that it wasn't too late to make a better choice. I found out later from one of the bridesmaids. He stood by me, of course, but that moment stuck with me. She wanted me gone before I even became family. Years passed, and while she never said those words again, her actions never changed. I was never invited to girls-only brunches. She'd plan family photos and forget to include me. Every smile she gave me was fake, stretched too thin to hide her disapproval. Then she planned a dinner, an elegant one, for close family and some of her social circle. I wasn't invited. Again, what she didn't know was that the restaurant she chose had deep meaning for me. It was where my late mother used to work as a chef. After she passed, I stayed close with the owner, Mr. Ramos. He'd been like an uncle to me growing up, offering kind words and warm meals when I needed them most. When I heard about the dinner, I reached out to him. He didn't hesitate. "I've got a table waiting for you," he said. I arrived just before the guests were seated. The staff greeted me with hugs. Mr. Ramos walked me to the center of the room like I belonged there, because I did. My mother-in-law's face twisted the moment she saw me. "You weren't invited," she said flatly. I looked her in the eye. "And yet here I am." Before she could say more, Mr. Ramos stepped in. "This restaurant holds memories," he said gently, "and we don't allow people who try to ruin them." Then he looked at her. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave." She laughed, thinking he was joking. But when the staff quietly waited for her to comply, her expression cracked. Guests whispered. Some looked uncomfortable. Others stared at me with a new kind of respect. She left without another word. I sat down at the table she chose for herself. I didn't come for revenge. I came to honor my mother and take back something that had been stolen from me for years. My place. And this time no one could take it away. She always cared about appearances more than anything. My mother-in-law lived for status, for carefully staged photos and perfect dinner parties. Her world was polished, quiet luxury and flawless manners on the surface. So when she booked a family dinner at one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, it wasn't just a meal. It was her way of showing off once again. Her friends, her relatives, her influence. Everyone invited. Except me. She didn't even try to hide it this time. "It's a small, curated event," she told my husband with a fake smile. "Not everyone fits the vibe. I fit just fine." She just didn't like that I worked my way up. PR wasn't classy enough. Media? Too messy. But what she forgot is, messy is what I do best. What she also didn't know was that I'd worked with the restaurant's new marketing team just months before. I'd helped them revamp their branding, and in the process, made good friends with the management. So I called in a favor. With their permission, I crafted a single post. "We're proud to host many guests, but we don't tolerate discrimination or exclusion, especially against our own." It was posted during the dinner, right after she tried to block me at the door. She stood in front of me, arms crossed, voice cold. "You weren't invited." I just smiled and said, "You should check the restaurant's Instagram." Her face paled as she pulled out her phone. The post was already getting traction. Shares, comments, tags. Then the second post went up, a picture of me with the caption, "We stand by our community. And tonight, we stand by our partner." That was the truth. I had quietly bought a small stake in the parent company through my firm's investment brand. She never saw it coming. The staff escorted me inside while she stood frozen at the door, eyes locked on her screen as the likes piled up. By morning, it was everywhere. Screenshots, reaction videos, even memes. MIL of the year tries to ban the co-owner. Rich energy, poor decisions. Even my inbox flooded with messages, some from strangers, others from people who'd dealt with women like her for years. She didn't speak to us for weeks after that. But the silence was golden. I didn't yell. I didn't fight. I simply did what I do best. Let the story tell itself. And sometimes the best revenge is letting the whole world watch. She never saw me as more than a gold digger. From the beginning, my mother-in-law looked at me like I had only one goal. She made little jokes at gathering, always hinted that I lucked out by marrying into the family. It didn't matter that I worked hard or had my own life before meeting her son. In her eyes, I didn't earn anything. What she didn't know was that I came from legacy too, just not the kind she recognized. My grandfather was a quiet man, never flashy, but he built several businesses during his lifetime. He believed in letting his work speak for itself. When he passed away, most of the family was shocked to learn how much he'd built, and even more surprised when he left it all to me. One of his properties was a fine dining restaurant tucked in the heart of the city. Classic, respected, and, without her knowing, it happened to be the place she chose for her next big family dinner. I said nothing when I found out. My husband and I just smiled. When the night came, I walked in, calm and collected. She spotted me from across the room and stormed over. "You don't belong here," she snapped. "You weren't invited." I looked at her, then nodded toward the manager. "Maybe you should ask who does belong." He walked over immediately, greeted me warmly, and said, "Good to see you, ma'am. Your table is ready." She blinked. "Excuse me?" "She owns this place," he said simply. "Has for months." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I stepped closer. I'm not here to fight, but you have two options: stay and behave or leave. For the first time in years, she was speechless. She sat at the far end of the table that night, quiet, barely touching her food. Her usual crowd of chatter and compliments didn't come. People noticed the shift. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't gloat. I just hosted the dinner like a true owner, with grace. She couldn't call me names anymore, couldn't question what I had or how I got it. The truth was simple. I never needed to prove anything to her. But now she knew. And from that night on, she finally stayed quiet.